Students in BUS 340, welcome back. I wanted to present, or I'm going to present to you a lecture on unionization and collective bargaining. The chances are absolutely excellent that when you leave here, you will be a part of an organization, be it for-profit or nonprofit, where at least some, if not most, of the workforce is covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Unionized employees. At Augsburg College, I was part of the management team that negotiated opposite Local 70 operating engineers. The operating engineers, janitors, the maintenance people, organized with the help of Local 70 and are represented by Local 70. I was involved in the first contract, the first establishment of the collective bargaining agreement between Augsburg and Local 70, and then 3 years later, I was part of the renegotiation. My experience has always been on the management side, whether it's been in the case of a nonprofit or a for-profit organization. So you could say that my perspective is from management. That's true. But I'm interested, very interested, in trying to present with you important takeaways about what a union is, why people join unions, and why unions are very, very important, and how unions impact you, whether or not you're covered by a collective bargaining agreement or you're an independent employee, that is, that you go into management. So stay with me. Here we go. Well, let's talk about unions. Let's talk about this thing called unionization. And I think it's important to try to understand how unions evolve, why people want to join unions. Typically, it is a reaction. Employees in the organization, be it for-profit or nonprofit, are reacting. And they're reacting against the leadership team of the organization. Now, Friedrich Hertzberg identifies job dissatisfiers, and that's sort of helpful. So, what are the employees angry about? Well, typically they're angry about poor management, poor supervision, poor working conditions, poor working relationships, low status within the organization, low pay, and other things. But those are sort of like the gut issues that sort of motivate employees to seek unionization. Typically, the employees feel that the leadership team is not addressing their important needs and wants, and they react. It could be that a group of employees would just go through the phone book or just go online and start calling a union. Perhaps they'll call the aerospace workers, and they say, "Yeah, well, we want to talk about unionization." And they'll say, "Well, what sort of job classification are you?" And they'll say, "Well, we're maintenance workers, we're operating engineers, et cetera." And they say, "Well, we're not the right union for you. You need to call the operating engineers, in this case, Local 70. And they do. And Local 70 will send an organizer down to talk to the folks, to try to ascertain why they're upset, why they feel as though they need a union. The other way, of course, is that unions do hire organizers. And sometimes those organizers are salaried plus commission based upon the number of people they bring in, or they're just salaried organizers. They'll come in and they'll try to measure the temperature of the employees in the organization. Is there a great deal of satisfaction? Are they angry about, again, working conditions, working relationships, low status, low pay, poor management, etc.? And so then they'll say, well, you know, it looks like there's enough people here who are angry and enough people here who really want unionization, who want to be represented by a union. The first step is that there'll be a campaign to encourage employees to sign authorization cards. The authorization cards simply state that, yes, I'm a member of the bargaining unit. I'm classified as a maintenance worker at this institution, and I would like the opportunity to vote. I would like the opportunity to decide whether or not I want to be part of a union. Now, the authorization cards are then sent to the National Labor Relations Board. If an employee signs an authorization card, what it really means is they'd like the opportunity to vote. It doesn't mean that they will necessarily vote for a union once the election is held. The organizer needs to have a sufficient number of cards signed. Those cards then are sent to the National Labor Relations Board. The NLRB will notify the organization, will verify that there are people in those job classifications who want to vote. They'll notify the organization that we, the National Labor Relations Board, are coming in and we're going to have an election. Now, at this point in time, maybe the organization doesn't even know there's an organizing attempt. Maybe they don't know that the employees are disgruntled to the point where they want to join a union. If that's the case, that really is a fault of management. It means that they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention to the most important assets, the employees who work within the organization. Management wasn't listening. And it's surprising to me that management won't know there's an organizing campaign, won't know till they get a notification for the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, that we're going to have an election. The election requires a simple majority of those voting to decide the issue. Let's say that it's a beautiful summer day. Let's say that we have 100 employees in this job classification, maintenance workers, janitorial people, operating engineers, etc. And on the day of the election, it's a beautiful summer day, maybe it's a July day, 80 degrees, sunny, the sky is clear. The date of the election is June 15th. National Labor Relations Board will be here to oversee the election. Unfortunately, of the 100 employees who are authorized to vote, only 21 employees actually show up to vote. 11 vote yes, 10 vote no, the union wins. It takes a simple majority of those voting. Now, my example is extreme, but I really want to make the point. It just takes a simple majority of those voting. If that's the case, then the company has to engage in contract negotiations. Before I get to contract negotiations, the question is, what's the interaction between management and the union while this is going on during the card authorization campaign? Maybe management knows there's a card authorization campaign. Maybe, well, at this point, they're going to know that there's going to be an election. So how does management respond? Well, I want to get to that right now. Basically what happens is this. There are three key parts. There are others, but there are three key parts. One deals with economics, one deals with work rules, and one deals with provisions for grieving disputes. Let's take the first one. Let's take economics. The union will say to employees, that is those who have signed authorization cards, those who want an election, the union is going to say that we're going to get you better economic conditions. We're going to get you more pay. We're going to get you more benefits. You're going to earn more money. You'll have a better life if you decide to organize, if you decide to become part of our union. What management is saying is this. Look, the union doesn't pay you. We pay you. They don't pay you. We pay you. Any increase in salary and benefits has to come from us. We have to agree to it. So if they're promising you increases in pay and benefits, that's not necessarily going to happen. That has to be negotiated, and we have to agree to it. Work rules. The union is going to say, look, we're going to have management guarantee your hours of work. We're going to have management guarantee not only your hours of work, but your workstation. And they cannot arbitrarily move you around or adjust your work schedule. We're going to have work rules. On the other hand, management going to counter, they're going to say, well, look, we've never had to have a third party between us before. If you wanted to change your schedule, we could change your schedule. We could help you change your schedule. We could give you an alternative workstation. We had the flexibility to do that. And when you requested it, we tried our best to accommodate your request. So they'll say, and maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but that's the position. If you vote for a union, we're not going to have that flexibility anymore. It's going to be rigid. Here's your work hours, here's where you work, etc. No flexibility. The union is going to say, we're going to establish with management progressive discipline. That is that if they want to discipline you for some reason, there are steps they have to follow. And along the way, you have the right to be represented by a union steward, a union representative. We're going to counter by saying, well, we've never had to have somebody again come between us. If we've had an issue with you, we've been able to talk to you, we've been able to resolve it, we've been able to get the issue resolved. We don't need to have any formalized progressive discipline. We've never needed it in the past, and we don't need it now. So it's set. We're going to indicate the reasons why we don't think you would want to join a union, and the union is going to try to convince you that you do need a union. Now, there's other union issues, other parts of the collective bargaining agreement, but three of the most major are economics, work rules, provisions for grieving disputes. Here are some of the things that we can do. Here are some of the things that we can't do from a management perspective. The bargaining arena. You have management on one side of the table and the union on the other side of the table. Well, the bargaining arena, so to speak, is impacted by a number of variables, outside variables, like public sentiment. Public sentiment has never really, the unions have not done a very good job to communicate to the public why they should. We pick it up after that. Sorry, Tommy, I lost it. It's my age. Guys, for the stumble, my throat went a little dry. I needed to have some water. So my editor my producer actually has told me that I need to go forward, and he's really a taskmaster. So I'm going to move forward. The bargaining process is impacted by a number of variables, like I indicated. One of them is the public. Unions have not done a good job communicating to the general public why they should be recognized, why their employees should be earning more money, why their employees should be earning better benefits. The example of that is that recently there was a public sector union. They were bus drivers, and they decided that, or the state decided actually, that they wanted them to pay part of their health care. They were getting 100%. And 100%, and they wanted to move toward a 90-10 configuration where the state would pay 90 and then the employees would pay 10. We're going to use this as a theoretical example. The union leadership decided that they weren't going to do that. That they weren't going to accept that. And as a result, they decided to go out on strike. This was a problem. It was problematic. All the buses came to a halt. When the state communicated to the public that, well, the biggest issue why the drivers decided to walk off the job, these public sector employees decided to walk off the job, was simply this. They decided that they didn't want to move to a 90-10 configuration. State pays 90, they pay 10. Well, when this was communicated, most people in the workforce were paying 80-20 or 90-10. That is, if their company paid 80 and they paid 20, or their company paid 90 and they paid 10%. And so as a result, there was very little sympathy for a group of public sector employees, in this case, drivers, who were getting 100% paid health insurance and now had to revert to 90-10. There was very little sympathy for that. And as a result, they lost the strike. So the unions have not done a good job communicating to the public why they're fighting for benefits and why they're fighting for a better pay, et cetera. What happens is that, you know, if you're going to take your employees out on strike, in the back of your mind, you have to realize that there's a possibility that you might lose. And while those employees are on strike, they're not entitled in most states to unemployment. They're not entitled to unemployment, and all of their salary, which would normally be paid by their employer, that salary, in most cases, is lost. And there's always probability that those jobs are going to be replaced. They're not going to hire those people back. Those are all problematic issues, and a lot of it depends upon the jurisdiction. But the fact of the matter is that if you take your employees out, there is no guarantee you're going to win the strike. There is no guarantee that those employees are going to get back the compensation that they lost. There's no guarantee that the situation is going to be any better. And in fact, in the case of that I just mentioned, our theoretical case of the public employees, bus drivers, they did lose. They didn't get 100%. They settled for 90-10, which was offered in the first place. They lost months of wages, and they settled for exactly what the state offered in the first place. It was not a good situation. It's a bad situation, especially for the bus drivers. The issues being discussed, well, like I said, there are three issues being discussed. Well, there are other issues, but primarily it's economics, work rules, and provisions for grievance disputes. Precedents in the bargaining process, what's happened previously. In the case of Augsburg, there was a suggestion by Local 70 that really would like to move toward a pick where employees get to pick. They get to pick their job station, get to pick their hours of work. A reasonable proposal. But upon thinking about it and discussing it, it was a bad idea. And it was a bad idea only because it establishes a precedent in the bargaining process. So if you move toward a pick and employees get to pick their job station and get to pick their hours of work, and for some reason it doesn't work out, and supervisors and management say, that pick was not a very good idea, as a matter of fact, that we don't want that anymore. We don't want to do that pick anymore. And so when you're negotiating and the contract comes up again, you previously, in a previous contract, agreed to a pick, and now you don't want to do the pick anymore. Well, it's a precedent in the bargaining process. So when you put that on the table, we don't want to do this pick anymore. Well, the obvious answer from the union will be, okay, what do you want to trade? What do you want to give up? There's horse trade. There's trading back and forth. And as a result, if we think it's going to be a problem in the future, we don't want to establish a precedent. The goals of the bargaining party. I was never really interested in being part of a management team that was trying to break, a negotiation team, I should say, that was trying to break the union. As far as I was concerned, these employees formed a union because they felt that they were not being, their issues were not being addressed by the management team. And by that I mean, they felt that they were poor working conditions, poor working relationships, very low status, very low job security, a poor pay, poor working conditions, and poor supervision. They joined the union because they felt they needed a union, and I respect that. On the other hand, I want to try to get the best deal that I can in negotiation, or I should say our negotiation team wants to get the best deal that we can, the best agreement that we can on behalf of management. And again, it's a tougher situation, I think, for the union leaders on the other side of the table. It's tough because there's always the arrow in the quiver of going out on strike, but it's not necessarily something that a union leader, I think, in most cases, they don't take that lightly. Because again, there's always a possibility if they go out, the people might not be able to come back and the strike would have failed. They also have to go back to their union members, that is those who are negotiating on behalf of the union. They have to go back to the union members and get their union members to agree to the contract. And you had a situation where the union at one point wanted to get a 12% pay increase. And perhaps we offered a 3% pay increase because that's the going rate. Well, we're pretty far apart. And then when the union goes back and say, okay, well, we got managed to settle for a 4% pay increase, which is above the average in union contracts in the context of this economy, you're going to get people who pound the table and say, well, we told you to get 12%. Well, the fact of the matter is that that wasn't realistic in the first place. But these people have to go back and they have to, the union representatives have to go back and sell that to the union members. And that is not always easy. Sometimes it's very, very, very difficult. The state of the economy certainly has an impact on union negotiations, and of course, labor law. I want to move on. I want to address a couple of issues. In my experience in negotiating contracts with the unions, there is a time where we will reach what is known as impasse. And that is that we can't agree. The union's position is if we want 12% pay increase, we're offering 3% pay increase, and somebody will file for arbitration. Usually the union will file for, not arbitration, excuse me, for mediation. The state and the federal government offer mediation services. They're very, very effective. Very, very effective at getting parties to agree. I've been through mediation a couple of times, federal mediation. The way it works is that the federal mediator will be an experienced human resources officer, experience in labor relations in particular. They will have had experience in negotiating contracts on behalf of the company they work for, or that mediator will have a labor background and they were president of a union, or they have a lot of experience in negotiating contracts on behalf of unions. So the mediators come from either a management or a union background, and they're very, very, very good. I think their success rate is well up in the 90s. They're very successful. The way it works is that we will be in one room, the union will be in the other room, and the mediator will go back and forth. And you'll talk about what's realistic. What's realistic for the union members to expect, and then I'll come back to us and say, well, here's something that I think you have to understand in lieu of the current job situation, the current economy. This is a much more realistic pay increase figure that I think you have to offer. So we'll go back and forth on those two issues and finally come to an agreement. In my experience, if the union is looking for 12, we're offering 16, but, we'll offer 12. The union's looking for 12, we'll offer 12. They want 12, 1 year, we'll offer 12 spread over 3 years. 3 years. And typically going back and forth, we reach a settlement. And again, mediators do not make final decisions, they mediate between management and the union. Now, I talked about economics, work rules, and I want to talk about this thing called progressive discipline. Along the way, let's assume again that the union has won. They won the election, 21-20 or 11-10. They won the election, and so now we have to negotiate the third part of this, which is a provision for grieving disputes. If an employee has a grievance, they can file the grievance with the supervisor, with the manager, somebody who represents management, and there will be discussion between the employee and the supervisor. If it's not resolved in that situation, it'll go up the line. It'll be between a union steward, that is, somebody who works for the union, or an elected steward, a person who represents the local membership. The local membership gets to elect a fellow employee that they want to represent them in dealing with the company. That doesn't work, it'll go up the line. And perhaps there is most organizations will have a mutual problems committee, or I think in today's jargon, I'll call it a mutual resolutions committee. It'll be a group of management of the company on one side and union stewards and perhaps union organizers, union officials on the other side of the table. And they'll negotiate back and forth. One theoretical example I can give you is I was involved in a mutual problems situation with the driver, and this involved a driver who made mistakes in terms of dropping off packages to company deliveries. He made a terrible mistake, and the wrong packages went to the wrong companies, and there was a really a lot of problems that resulted. And the companies came back and demanded that, your driver made a mistake, we got the wrong packages, we want our money back, and plus this caused a disruption of business, and so you owe us money on top of that. And so the committee will go back and forth and they'll look at it. Well, what can we do? What are the problems here? What are the issues? How can we resolve this? And perhaps the employee will get some discipline. Maybe they'll get suspended, 2 weeks without pay, or 2 weeks with pay, they're away for the job. Depends on the severity of the problem, the issue, and the final agreement between the union committee and the management committee. If none of this works, there's always arbitration at the very, very, very top. I've been to arbitration a couple of times, and I'll give you an example of an arbitration case that went all the way up to the very, very top. Before I do that, there's always the issue in the collective bargaining agreement. We're talking about grieving disputes, progressive discipline, where an employee has a grievance against the company. There's always the question, if this goes all the way to arbitration, who pays for the arbitrator? Arbitrators are extremely expensive. They get paid a lot of money. It varies, but they get paid a lot of money to sit and listen to disputes between the union and the company. Now, the American Arbitration Association We'll have a list of arbitrators. There are, they'll give the company, the union, 7 names of arbitrators. Union gets to scratch 3. We get to scratch 3. Who's ever left, that's the person. That's going to be the arbitrator. Now, the question is, who pays the arbitrator? Typically, the union's position is, well, we'll do it 50-50. Regardless of who wins, we'll do it 50-50. Management positions usually is, no, loser pays. Loser pays. Whoever loses the arbitration pays. Now, the reason for that, from a management's perspective, is that we're interested in having these issues resolved at these lower levels. We're not interested in the issue going all the way to arbitration. Again, I testified at arbitration hearings. And one of the issues where I testified, the organization needed to have callbacks. If there was a storm, if there was snow, if there was an issue, they needed to have people call back and and come in and work to resolve whatever the issue was. A massive snowstorm, for example, they needed snow moved. And the agreement was that we would use seniority. We would give the most senior members of that job classification the first chance, the very, very first chance to accept that callback and overtime pay, etc. And lo and behold, there was a major storm. We went down the list, management went down the list of all the employees in that job classification, and they all refused. Now, at that point, the union said, well, you tried to call people in arbitrarily. That is, that you didn't use the seniority system. You had to start at the very, very bottom and start drafting employees. He said, no, after we go through the list as far as seniorities, and if we get people that are declining from top to bottom, we reserve the right to call an employee and say, you must commit. We don't have to go through the list in ascending order all over again. I went to an arbitrator, and the arbitrator ruled in favor of management. Those are sort of the typical issues that you come up with. Let me say in conclusion that this thing called a union is important for you to understand, and I want you to take away from this the reasons why people join unions. And I mentioned those reasons twice. And I want you to understand that management has an obligation to represent the best interest of the company. I would never be part of a management team that wanted to break a union. That's not right. It's not ethical as far as I'm concerned. If those employees voted to join a union, they felt they needed a union in their relationship with the management of the company. Also, too, in many organizations where part of the company is unionized, but you're an independent employee, you're part of management. Well, if you notice, if you watch the negotiations between the company and management, and I've always done this, if I was part of the negotiation team or not, if the union decides to accept 80-20 on healthcare, let's say, they agree to go from 90 to 80, where the company pays 80 and they pay 20, where it was 90-10, then I know what's going to happen. Those of us that are independent employees, the company's going to move us to 80-20 as well. Point is that in many organizations, unions drive benefits and pay. It's been my observation, as an independent employee, again, not part of the negotiations team, if the union settles for 3 years, 3-year contract, 3% per year, 9% pay increase over 3 years, that's exactly what, as an independent employee, I'm going to get as well. So watch the relationship between unions and management in your company. Watch it. Whatever the union settles for, typically, as an independent employee, you're going to get the same thing. If you have questions on this lecture, fire them away. Happy to answer those questions. Again, we're going to post this on YouTube. It's going to be Professor John at Augsburg University, BUS 340. Thank you, and we'll check in later.